On May 17, 1954, the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling that dismantled legal segregation in public schools. For the federal government, this decision functioned as a high-stakes tactical maneuver in a global shadow war. Every week, we take a single historical date and unpack the 5-minute geopolitical story behind it. Today, we're looking at why the end of Jim Crow became a requirement for international survival. By the early 1950s, the globe had fractured. The United States and the Soviet Union were competing for ideological influence over dozens of newly decolonized nations emerging across Asia and Africa. To these new nations, American claims of democratic superiority were easily dismissed. State-mandated segregation, Jim Crow laws, rendered Black Americans second-class citizens in full view of the world. Soviet leadership capitalized on this. They saturated the global South with reports of American racial violence and separate facilities, arguing that a country unable to treat its own citizens equally could not be trusted to lead the free world. Internal State Department memos from this era are explicit. Ending domestic segregation was a national security imperative, necessary to secure strategic alliances and contain communist influence. When NAACP Chief Counsel Thurgood Marshall built the case against the Board of Education, he knew 60 years of legal precedent stood in his way. He shifted the battlefield from constitutional theory to empirical data. Marshall relied on Kenneth and Mamie Clark, who studied the impact of racism on children using plastic baby dolls. The dolls were identical except for skin color. They asked young Black children from segregated schools to identify which doll was nice and which looked bad. This chart shows the results. 59% of the children associated the Black doll with negative traits. The children had internalized their own second-class status, viewing themselves through the lens of a segregated society. Chief Justice Earl Warren cited this psychological evidence in the unanimous May 17, 1954 ruling. The court declared that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal because they damage the hearts and minds of children. Empirical data provided the objective basis to overturn 60 years of precedent, effectively ending the era of separate but equal. The ruling immediately met a campaign of massive resistance. Southern political leaders organized to block integration, shutting down entire public school systems rather than comply with the federal mandate. In 1957, Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus deployed the state National Guard to block 9 Black teenagers from entering Little Rock Central High School. Images of the Little Rock standoff were broadcast globally, humiliating the Eisenhower administration. Soviet diplomats used the crisis to discredit American democracy in the United Nations, presenting the U.S. as a hypocritical regime. President Eisenhower responded by federalizing the Arkansas National Guard and ordering the elite 101st Airborne Division into Little Rock. Combat troops escorted the students into the school at bayonet point. The event proved that the Supreme Court's ruling was only effective when backed by the full weight of the federal military. The federal government immediately deployed the news of the integration efforts as counter-propaganda. Within hours of the initial 1954 ruling, the Voice of America broadcast the decision across international airwaves. The State Department sent press releases to newly decolonized nations like India, framing the decision as proof of America's commitment to equality and the rule of law. Legally mandating integration stripped the Soviet Union of its most effective diplomatic weapon. Domestic civil rights became a calculated strategy to secure the global South and maintain American leadership in the Cold War. The end of legal segregation required the intersection of two forces, the psychological proof of the doll test and the global pressure of the Cold War. On May 17, 1954, moral justice and international survival became the exact same objective. Subscribe for more 5-minute breakdowns linking historical dates to global strategy.